All right, folks, Yishai Fleischer here. We are live broadcasting from my studios in Hebron. And I was working here in Hebron, and we say in Hebrew, Hebron, city of the forefathers and mothers. I was working here today. My daughter called me. She said, you must have heard what happened today in Jerusalem. I told her I have not, given that I was just doing my stuff. I didn't even look down at the phone, and I didn't see what was really happening. And it turns out that a very awful terror attack took place today in Jerusalem in the late morning, which right now the count is, by most reports, 6 dead and some 15 injured. I saw one report of 7 dead, mostly ultra-Orthodox Jews, because this was a strike against an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood in Jerusalem called Remote. And what's amazing is that the civilian who shot and killed the terrorist turns out to be an ultra-Orthodox guy who is a soldier, was a soldier. I'm trying to figure that out exactly. But the bottom line is he is trained as an ultra-Orthodox soldier and one of the commanders of the new Hashmonaim ultra-Orthodox unit, and shot and killed the terrorist. So that is amazing in itself, in that the bad guys probably targeted this neighborhood because they figured that the ultra-Orthodox don't have guns. And here came a man who was armed, due to the fact that Minister Ben Gvir, Minister of National Security, has been talking a lot about arming the civilian population. And indeed, it turns out that the civilian population defends people, and the response for such terror attacks has gone down from 5 minutes to more like 30 seconds. In this case, the terrorism started, and we're going to see video of this ultra-Orthodox young man / soldier coming close, hearing the shooting, and instead of the natural human reaction, which is to run away, ran towards the action, made contact with the enemy, and destroyed the terrorists. And that was very important. Moreover, there is discussion about the bus driver being involved, or other drivers being involved in this terror incident. Let's take a look at some video so we can get a sense of what happened here and how Israel is dealing with it. All right. So here's a video of kind of the what it looks like from the outside, this terror attack in Jerusalem.
Thank you for that update, Mayan. Is there someone with you that...
All right, let's take a look here. That is not the video that I want to show. Just one second. Let's see this.
Thank you for that update, Mayan. Is there someone with you that you wanted us to hear from?
Yes, I do actually have somebody who is not a specific eyewitness, but came moments after Chaim Silverstein, who unfortunately had suffered from his own terror attack in his family. Chaim, tell us about what you experienced just moments after the attack occurred.
On my way to work, we have officers very close by, a few hundred meters from the site of the terror attack, and I was on my way to work. We have workers that come in every day on this very bus, and so I was very concerned and worried that some of my workers might have been on the bus. There was mayhem here, a lot of confusion and fear, and fortunately the medical services, the police and the security services came here very quickly and dealt with the situation.
And send us the message of strength that you wanted to share earlier today. What is the message that you need to deliver?
I think that the goal of terror is to weaken us, to demoralize us, and to defeat us. And as a family that has experienced a terror attack, our response must be the opposite. Our response must be to gain strength from this, to show strength, to show courage, and to defeat terror. Because if we do not defeat terror, they will overcome us. And that is a tragedy.
All right, so the bad guys want to get the Jewish people. We can't succumb to terror. Chaim Silverstein was somebody who's a dear friend of mine, actually. His daughter was shot and wounded and lost her baby in womb, in utero. And she, thank God, has continued to live a healthy life and have children. But Chaim Silverstein also made another video by himself speaking. I wanted to see his feelings from that terror scene.
At the Ramot Junction just a short while after this terrible terror attack happened this Monday morning, and we're at this point 6 people have been murdered, and this is a central junction in Jerusalem, and it is just shocking that they dare to carry out terror attacks like this. We see that there is an envelope of support from the international community through Turkey, even France, who supports the establishment of a Palestinian state. It's a message that they want terror to carry out here in order to weaken Israel. We've got to understand that supporting a Palestinian state, supporting the enemies of Israel, only emboldens the terrorists to carry out more terror attacks, and we saw the results of that today.
You know, it's a very important point that Chaim Silverstein is making. And recently I read in a book about World War II that Hitler only went towards the final solution when he saw that the West was pretty silent about the mistreatment of Jews. And he understood that the Jews are trapped between the hammer of radical Nazism and the apathy and the anvil of the West. And when he saw that the West was not reacting to his Jew hatred policies, he's like, we could go for the final solution because the West is quiet about this. Clearly, they're okay with us striking against the Jews. So too here. The jihadists look to see if the international community is with them. And no doubt they have a sense that the international community is supporting terrorism on the Jews and anti-Jewish. Right now, there's tons of people who are like, yeah, the Jews deserve it, because they sense that Western governments are here. Exactly. Look, see, some guy right here writes to me right now, shame on Israel, right? After a terror attack, this guy's writing shame on Israel because he's one of the axis of support for hate for Israel. And so therefore, what Chaim Silverstein is saying is, listen, when France says that it supports Palestinian statehood, and when they see such a thing and they don't react, it means that they are tacitly the anvil of support for Jewish murder, for anti-Israelism, and that's the real truth. And when you see it, you know, when you start saying it in clarity and seeing it in clarity, you get to start to be like, yeah, you know, like I know what's going on here. Here, somebody's writing, shame on Keir Starmer. That's exactly right. That's right. Somebody's writing here, shame on Hamas. That's right. They are, and another person named Meathead writes, defund the United Nations. Doesn't seem like a meathead to me at all. It seems like he's very clear. That's exactly right. These organizations are tacitly supporting strikes and attacks against the Jews. That's the truth. Here, political rights, they are celebrating it on social media. Exactly. And when the West is tacitly backing this, the jihad gets the same message that the Nazis got, which is we can attack the Jews. No, the world is with us, and we will be celebrated. Not only will we not be sanctioned, we will be celebrated. All right, let's see the actual attack. Says Sandra, how great is that religious soldier who served in the IDF? Not religious, because there's a lot of religious soldiers, ultra-Orthodox. That's what's important here. Let's get a little sense through the video of the scene. All right, so traffic. Israelis are notoriously not so great at merging. We're not so great at merging. So here's the merge. See people on the upper right, on the middle of the screen, right in front of the bus that's to the right, you see another bus. People are standing, loading up on that bus. The bus is packed. Suddenly you hear some shooting in the background. That now Israelis know how to identify shooting and know that it's not building. They're shooting. Okay, people understand what's going on, and they are out of there. They are out of there. They're running. Now look at the makeup of the people. It's ultra-Orthodox people living in Ramot, living in this area. And one of the reasons that this attack is taking place there is because the jihadists know that these people are usually less armed. Now watch this. Right in front of our screen is a cab driver. Check out what he's doing, this cab driver. Okay? Watch what he's up to. Okay, very serious gunshots. Lots of weapons are going off. Tons and tons of shooting. Look what this cab driver is doing. He's looking in the back door. What's he up to? Now, watch. Oops! Oh, what did I do? Oh my gosh! Okay, here he comes again. He can't do whatever he's doing on that side. He's going to the other side. Look what he's doing. Did you just see that? There's a bullet that struck right to the right of him. Look, I'm going to rewind the tape. Notice a little bit to the right of him. Look at the window, the windshield of the bus. Check this out, okay? Watch this. I'm rewinding just a little bit. He's reaching into the back seat. Watch. Boom. And he doesn't even realize it. It's shooting right above his head. It was 2 feet from his head. It was 2 feet from his head. What's he doing? Holy cow. He's got this old lady he's taking out. And he's getting this old lady out of the cab. He's like, this is a dangerous moment. Oh my God. Okay, now, did you see? Wait, I'm rewinding the tape. I'm rewinding the tape a little bit. Look, there's soldiers running towards. Now, wait a minute. Understand what this means. This means that the soldier is running towards the fire, towards the killing range, right? Like going to what we call in Hebrew maga. He's coming to contact with the enemy. He's yozem. What's the Hebrew English word for that? He is working towards. His goal is to make contact with the enemy. Okay, so he's out there, and soon enough, there's another one. And look at these guys. Look at these guys. They are moving towards the fire to find the enemy and to destroy him. Amazing, unbelievable. Hold on, there's another video of this thing from a different angle. There was another video. Did I get it? Could be. In any case, this is really it's unbelievable to see these guys and the courage that Israelis have. Says Ralph, and they want to give these terrorists statehood? Certainly not, right? Keep them all out of Judea and Samaria. Let's see Prime Minister Netanyahu as he arrived on the scene. Remember, folks, we saw some heroism, but 6 people were murdered. Here's Prime Minister Netanyahu at the event, at the scene of the horrific crime. So you see to the right of him is Minister of National Security Ben Gvir. He says, Netanyahu, we're in a war. We're a war in many fronts. I want to send first my condolences to the families of all those who have been murdered. And I'm wishing health for all those who are injured. We are at war on many fronts. We've also had successes on many fronts. The war continues also in the Gaza Strip. We're going to in Gaza, we're going to completely destroy the Hamas. I was going to use the word decimate, but decimate is an incorrect word because decimate means like leave a tenth. No, completely and utterly destroy, lachriv, to ruin Hamas.
שבה נחריב את החמאס. מי שהבטחנו ונשחרר את חטופינו, כל חטופינו. ולצערנו גם בירושלים. ביהודה ושומרון פעלנו.
To our dismay, also in Jerusalem, do we have these terrorists? In Judea and Samaria, we're also fighting.
בתקיפות רבה מאוד. השב"כ וצה"ל סיכלו מאות, וגם משטרת ישראל, סיכלו מאות פיגועים השנה.
Well, here he says something that I get upset about. He says the Shabak, which is the Israel's FBI, the GSS, and the army have stopped hundreds of terror acts in the last year. The reason I don't like that is because if there's hundreds of terror attacks, that means that the problem is much bigger than just individual acts of violence that need to be stopped. There is an education. There's a whole system of creating terrorists out there. There's a whole infrastructure of terrorism in Judea and Samaria. So it's not enough to stop the bad guys. It's not enough to stop the terrorists and to break up their proposed terrorism. It's not enough because it's not about a event by event situation. It's not like it's not about individuals. It's about a whole system, including the PA, including the Hamas in Judea and Samaria. And that's what I said today on I-24, on ILTV. Excuse me, I said on ILTV today that this war is a 5-year war at least. We're only now starting to deal with Judea and Samaria. We got to clean it out, Judea and Samaria. Of course, we have to take sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. The bottom line is it's not enough, Prime Minister Netanyahu, to deal with the hundreds of potential terror acts. We got to get in there and really take care of it. And I think he's maybe hinting to that's the next phase of the war.
אבל לצערנו לא בבוקר הזה. אנחנו עכשיו במרדף, בכיתור של הכפרים שמהם באו המרצחים.
So we're now surrounding the Arab villages from which the murderers came in. Okay, that's good. But at the same time, we know, and we've known that some of these Arab villages are very problematic. And here's even a bigger problem. Here's a problem that I don't think he's going to get to. And that's the problem of the bus driver. It turns out that there's a high likelihood that the bus driver, an Israeli Arab from Eastern Jerusalem, was involved in the terrorism. And I'll show you a video about a woman saying that I was on the bus. I saw the bus driver jump out from the bus before he was on the phone, seemingly organizing something with the terrorists, then jumping off the bus as they came on. So that's pretty bad. So we're not just dealing with Judea and Samaria. We're also dealing with Israeli Arabs and Eastern Jerusalem Arabs. The war continues here with jihadism throughout really the areas in Israel and surrounding Israel. Let's keep listening to Netanyahu.
ואנחנו נשיג את כל מי שסייע באדם, כל מי ששילח אותם, ואנחנו ננקוט בצעדים קשים עוד יותר.
We're going to find anybody who helped them, who was part of it, and he's referring to the bus driver, and he says that we're going to be tough.
אני רוצה לומר בצורה הכי ברורה.
I want to say in the clearest way.
הרציחות הללו, הפיגועים הללו, בכל הגזרות, הם לא מרפים את ידינו.
He says, I want you to know that these terrorist acts, they do not weaken us. They do not weaken us. They don't make us give up, run away, or forget about it. Quite the opposite.
הם רק מגדילים את הנחישות שלנו.
They only make us more stronger and more ready for the fight.
להשלים את המשימות שלקחנו על עצמנו.
To fulfill the missions that we have taken upon ourselves.
גם בעזה, גם ביהודה ושומרון, בכל מקום.
All right, in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria and in every.
אנחנו נלחמים בטרור.
I wish he would also say in Qatar, in Egypt, in Israel itself. I wish he would tell us the big truth. And we're going to talk about in just a few minutes about the situation with Egypt, with Khaled Hassan, who's going to come up in a minute. In the meantime, let's finish up with Netanyahu here.
במשטר הטרור של החות'ים, ואיראן מגבה את כולם, בעזה.
I have to take it back. He says, look, he says it's Yemen, the Houthis, it's Iran who backs them, it's in Gaza. Is he going to say Qatar?
בלבנון, חיזבאללה.
In Lebanon, Hezbollah as well.
בכל הגזרות, אנחנו לא מרפים וגם לא נרפה. אנחנו נעצים את הפעולות שלנו ואנחנו נשיג את כל המטרות שלנו.
Okay, we're gonna even make it a stronger war. We're gonna fulfill all of the missions that we set out for ourselves. So somebody writes here, Bookmouse writes, I love Itamar Ben-Gvir. So Minister Ben-Gvir said that his policy of giving out civilian weapons has been very effective, and that's true. I just wanted to show you that one more video, which was so important. The video of the people running. Let me see if I could get that video. It's not an easy video to find. People have not been putting it out, but there is a video. Oh, here it is. Let me get that up for you. It'll take me 1 second just to get it ready for you here. I thought I saved it, but let's get that for you here. Check out this vantage point. Check out this vantage point. 1 second. So you could see the people on the left side of the screen running away from the terrorism. And look, there's a little circle of a guy dressed in a white shirt. He's taking position on the corner, on the back left corner there, as we do in anti-terrorism. He's checking the angles to see if there's any terrorists waiting, and he's presenting the least amount of body that he can. Okay, at this point, he goes into the bus. He shoots 1 or 2 of the terrorists. In any case, total clarity I don't have of exactly how it went down, but you could see that ultra-Orthodox folks with guns went up there to deal with him. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. And what I said on ILTV is that today was a day of yet another awful terror and a sad day for the Jewish people and for Israel. But at the same time, a kind of heroic day, because the ultra-Orthodox, this big discussion that we're having about them being in the army, it's clear that when they're armed, bad guys can do less. And they saved, we lost 6, maybe 7 Jews today, Israelis, but they saved hundreds, tens of hundreds. You saw many people were around there. With automatic fire, they could have killed 30 Israelis easily. But it was ultra-Orthodox Jews ready to fire back, armed, that took care of the situation. And it's a heroic day in that sense. It's a heroic day. And also it's a day where Prime Minister Netanyahu said it clearly. We have another aspect of this war. We dealt with Gaza, then we dealt with Lebanon, then we dealt with Iran, then we dealt with Yemen. Now we're back to dealing with Gaza, and we're going to have to deal with Judea and Samaria as well. And that means that this war continues. And so anybody out there who thinks that this war is over and it's calming down, that's not happening. Jihadism has left the genie is out of the bottle, and it's time now to fight with it and to deal with it frontally. As I always say, also, the jihad victimizes Jews. It victimizes the West. It also victimizes Arabs, many Arabs who think differently. I know many of them. They're even here in Hebron who say, we don't want any part of this. We want to be part of Israel, or we want to be just free without corruption, without jihadism, without brainwashing of our children. They want an opportunity for a decent life. They are also victims of this. At the same time, it turns out probably that Israeli Arabs were involved in this terrorist act today in Jerusalem. All right, now we have to talk about a different aspect of this war, which is Egypt. I saw a tweet by Khaled Hassan, who is an Egyptian British national security and foreign policy expert and council member of the Israeli President Isaac Herzog's Voice of the People initiative. He advocates for Arab-Jewish reconciliation and the expansion of the Abraham Accords, which I believe in very much as well. His research has driven high impact outcomes. He's out there, and he is one of the 3 people to co-lead the ICC's case. He was one of the people to defend Israel in the ICC. Khaled Hassan wrote a tweet about that Egypt is preparing for war with Israel. I'm like, what? Are you serious? And I've been hearing more and more rumors about this. So I wanted to ask Khaled Hassan to come and join us. Khaled, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thanks for having me. Lovely being with you.
Khaled, Israel doesn't have enough problems now that we need also a war on the Egyptian side. What's the deal here? What's
yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, it's very interesting. Just to clarify, so my tweet, I essentially said everyone in Egypt, including the most senior officials, is talking about war with Israel. And in a way, actually, so I didn't say the Egyptians are preparing for war with Israel, but in a way they actually are. Like technically, we see preparations for war. I also indicated that I've never seen anything like this, and that we now know how it felt like before the 1967 war. It's very interesting because I believe that this has been allowed to develop over decades and decades, actually, since the 1979 war, and right under Israel's nose. And, essentially, in a way, it was sponsored by the US, sadly. So you look at Egypt and you find that Egypt has an army now. Egypt, just to tell people what Egypt is like, and explain very briefly, it's a nation of over 110 million people. It's an army that is trained by the Americans, and it's equipped by the Germans, the French, the Americans, and most recently the Chinese. So you're not talking about, because I often find Israelis making some really quite silly statements, I have to say, saying, if war broke out, we would just completely destroy Egypt in 4 hours, blah, blah, blah. This is not Hezbollah. You're not talking about Hezbollah.
Khaled, I have to say to you that you are absolutely right. One of the things that turns out is a problem that Israel has is a certain amount of arrogance, and that's something that Israel clearly had on October the 7th. Obviously, I'm Israeli, pro-Israel, Zionist, the whole thing. But let's call a spade a spade. There's clearly a kind of sense that the enemies are a bunch of jokers, and we could deal with them with their hands tied behind their back, and that's not the truth. And so Egypt is a serious army, and you're giving us a piece of intel of what that really looks like. It's a big army. How many people are we talking about? How big is this army? But you're talking about.
I mean, Egypt can easily, they have mandatory service like Israel, which is very interesting as well, because if you look across the region, you're going to find that only the Egyptians and the Israelis have mandatory civil service. Sorry, not civil service, military service. So it's very interesting when you look at this. You're talking about, Egypt can easily now, at the moment, they can easily, mobilize 500,000 people, 500,000 soldiers. That's the initial step. They have a lot more because most of the Egyptians are young people. So you're talking about a nation that can easily mobilize. I'll probably say 5 million. If they had to, they can easily do that. It's a serious challenge because I have a serious problem with the Israeli establishment. I'm not going to lie. I'm not someone. I would probably say I am a realist. I'm pragmatic. I don't take this sort of anti-establishment view that everything or everyone in government are completely stupid or they don't know what they're doing. But I also have to say there is a very serious issue with the Israeli establishment. So when I made my tweet, which made the news all over Israel,
what are you referring to? I don't understand what you're referring to.
I'll explain. So when I made the tweet, I had a lot of comments from Israelis saying, "Oh, you're a joke. You're a retard." Someone said, "You're a retard. Are you suggesting that the Egyptians will be waging war against Israel and destroying their country and destroying their military?" Which is really arrogant because Israelis believe that their sense of deterrence, like we have the F-35s, we have, we're a nuclear country, we have blah, blah, we have the IDF. So no one is going to touch us because everyone is scared of what we would do to them. And sadly, this is what led to 1967. This is what led to, the Yom Kippur surprise attack. And this is what led to October 7th. So Israel has been outsmarted by all those people, all those organizations. And they still don't see that, you can be outsmarted, you can be surprised. And you think that deterrence will just mean, your superiority, like at least air superiority, will mean that, people are deterred from attacking you. It's just not the case. It just isn't the case.
Khaled, tell me a little bit about the Egyptian psychology. I think that one of the reasons people are telling you this stuff is because they think to themselves, how does it make any sense? How does it make sense? Here's Egypt. It's a country that receives natural gas from Israel. It's a country that has what other people think is a peace deal, accords with Israel, the Sinai Accords, the Camp David Accords. Explain to me the psychology. One of the countries that's so close and yet so far from Israel is Egypt. It's like we border with Egypt, and yet nobody knows any Egyptians. Nobody has any Egyptian friends. I have many, Arab so-called Palestinian friends. I know many of them. I know Jordanians. I know some Lebanese folks. I don't know anybody on the Egyptian side. And it's like there's like an iron wall between the two. Explain to me, please, a little bit the Egyptian psychology at this moment. How do they see
this iron wall does actually exist. It's it exists, and it was created and maintained by the Egyptian military. You have to bear in mind that Egypt is, essentially when Nasser took over in 1952, he established this military state, and the military takes its legitimacy. It comes from mostly, the war with Israel, the conflict with Israel, anti-Semitism. So that's, there is this sense of, they create this sense of a hidden enemy that despite the peace with Israel, Israel is always plotting against us. Jews are always plotting against us. So this is the psychology, it comes from, really deeply rooted anti-Semitism and hatred. And that has shaped the Egyptian national identity. So that's why you're not going to find, many peace activists who are from Egypt or who actually live in Egypt. It's very, very rare. And that also creates a lot of problems. But mostly you have to look at the army, and even in the latest ceasefire deal that they proposed, that the Egyptians proposed, they said we didn't even discuss Hamas disarming. So it's very difficult to understand Egypt because it has so many different contradictions. So on one side, yes, they signed the peace treaty, but then a couple of weeks ago, one of the most prominent commentators, a man who worked for President Mubarak, a man who worked with President Sadat, very closely. And he was actually almost the chief of staff for President Mubarak for many years. And he said, we were the first to make peace, but we will be the last to normalize. And that tells you everything. Mm-hmm. And it really is very difficult for Israelis to understand this. I think, they find this really difficult to understand, but in many ways, this status quo is very beneficial for Egypt. They want Israel to always be an enemy, but they don't really want to go to war. But that has been changing after October 7th.
Okay, so I have friends, including my friend Jake, a very smart guy. He says to me, listen, we have to identify Egypt as a combatant in October the 7th. There's two elements of how Egypt is part of this war. First element is all of the war material, all of the arms, they were all shipped through the Sinai, through the tunnels and under Rafah in the Sinai. Egypt closed their eyes, or maybe aided and abetted a host of influx of weaponry into Gaza through the Sinai. So that's number one. That means they're actively part of the war. The other one is, here comes a situation, and this is just crazy, that you have millions of people that need to be refugees so they could be safe from this war zone, get clean, fresh water, eat normal food, and be protected and get out of harm's way, just like in every other conflict, like in Ukraine or in Syria. People are displaced. That means that the word displaced is not a nice word, but the word keeping themselves alive and being refugees so they get out of harm's way. And the natural place for them to go is the Sinai, which is Egypt controlled today. It's got plenty of space. You could set up tents there. You could have UN feed people, but the Egyptians closed and barred the border between Gaza and the Sinai. So in many ways, they want to keep them there, these Gazans, as fodder to die for so-called Palestine. And they're basically happy for them to die and to be a cannon fodder and thereby besmirch Israel, but certainly not to save them and to save their lives. So here are two ways that Egypt is part of this war. And now you're telling me that they're even talking about, in their upper echelons, are talking about a full conflict with Israel and mentally preparing for it. So is that right? Should Israel see Egypt as a combatant in this war of October 7th?
So this is very interesting because I think and I spoke to many senior IDF officers, and I spoke to many people, generally, in politics in Israel who are very senior, and many of them would completely reject this. They would say, no, you're setting us decades behind, decades back, because if you say, essentially the peace with Egypt is collapsing, then they believe that this is the foundation of peace with all Arab countries, which I don't believe. They believe this is the foundation of the Abraham Accords. So many would say no, but I generally believe, and I have been saying this, it's really important that the US and Israel recognize that Egypt is not an ally in many ways. Yes, the US and Egypt have, the Bright Star military drills, which just happened. They're the largest in the region, and you almost had 40 countries contributing and taking part in this. But it's a serious challenge. I would definitely say when it comes to Israel, yes, Egypt is, frankly, an enemy state. And you will see this, you'll see this. I've sent you some material that, I'm not sure if you can show now.
Yeah, let's play that video. You send me a video. I have it ready. Yes. And it's in Arabic, so I will ask you to translate afterwards.
Yes.
الدبلوماسية بين مصر وإسرائيل فيما يتعلق بالملف الفلسطيني. نشر المتحدث العسكري المصري فيديو لزيارة رئيس الأركان للمعاهد العسكرية التخصصية لضباط الجيش، وفي إحدى الغرف التدريبية ظهر على الشاشة في الخلفية عنوان عريض: المبادئ العامة للعمليات الهجومية الإسرائيلية. لم تكن هذه المرة الأولى التي يظهر فيها ضباط الجيش وطلبة الكلية الحربية يدرسون معدات وعمليات الجيش الإسرائيلي. ففي وقت
All right, so what are we saying till now?
Yes, so this is a very interesting video because it was actually produced by supposedly a human rights organization in Egypt. So as you can tell, it has nothing to do with human rights. It's actually just linked to the government, and they essentially do what they're told to do by the government.
Okay, but so what are they saying?
Yes, in this video, you're going to see that they're showing essentially what is a war room in Egypt. And then this war room, the chief of staff visits, and that was televised, by the way. And they show the officers studying the IDF and the IDF's offensive tactics. So they're essentially saying we're preparing for war. We're studying how the Israelis go to war. And this was not the first time, this was the most recent. But this has been happening frequently, a lot more than ever before, since October 7th. So shortly after October 7th, you saw this, we saw President Sisi visited the military academy, and behind him was the Merkava. And the officers were, reportedly studying how the Merkava, conducts war and how it operates on the battlefield and how they can attack it. So that was one thing. And what's really quite remarkable is how this seems to be almost completely overlooked or dismissed in Israeli media. You don't see.
Well, you said why. You explain why. Because it undermines a certain foundation of how Israelis perceive this region. They want to move forward with peace. They want to move forward with the Abraham Accords. So they're like, okay, we know that there's a lot of anti-Semitism in Egypt. We know that Mein Kampf is a top seller in Egypt, in the Egyptian street. We know that they keep on showing videos against us, but still we have a peace with them. So we're not going to say that they're bad guys. We're not going to call them out. They're afraid of the repercussions of that, right?
Oh yes, and there's huge misunderstandings around Egypt. It's we can show the other thing I sent you, because I think that will also be very relevant to just explain, the scale of the issue.
Okay, we're going to get to it in a second. I just want to give you a question from somebody who's watching. He writes, for the guest, for Khaled Hassan, why doesn't Egypt allow Egyptians to visit Israel? He says.
So it's actually a very serious process. So Egypt has a list of countries where if any Egyptian wants to travel to these countries, he has to go and obtain a security permit. So that security permit is essentially something that is given by the equivalent of Shabak or the equivalent of the FBI. So if an Egyptian wants to visit Turkey, he has to go get this now, because Egypt, knows the Muslim Brotherhood exists in Turkey. So they don't want anyone going there and, causing trouble or, getting some training or something and coming back to Egypt. And Israel is the same. So you have to go get the security permit. But Israel especially, it's almost impossible. You will never get this permit, and you will be treated as a spy. So the Egyptian intelligence community will treat you as a spy. Why do you want to go to Israel?
Wow.
You work for Mossad. So they have designed a system that basically means that any Egyptian who even wants to be involved in any activity that is pro-peace their life is completely destroyed. And that's the challenge. So they designed this.
One more tricky thing. You said something, you just threw it out. You said the Egyptian government, the Egyptian security services, they don't want folks to get any ideas from the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes.
They're afraid of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's illegal, the Muslim Brotherhood, right?
Yes.
And yet Hamas, which they are supporting, is Muslim Brotherhood. You'd think that they'd be like, Israel, you're great. You're getting rid of the Muslim Brotherhood. We support Israel, right? Because
yes.
we're both enemies of it. But no.
Well, here's where it gets interesting.
Go ahead. I just one point. I heard that there's a deal between al-Sisi and Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. I will support you, and I'll get you weapons and everything through these tunnels, and you stay out of Egypt. You go attack Israel, I'll support you. Stay out of Egypt because I don't want you inside.
No, I don't believe that's the case, but it's something else. So this is where, again, we come to the contradictions. So yes, Egypt, the Egyptian government is fearful of the Muslim Brotherhood, but that's because the Muslim Brotherhood threatens the stability and, the security of the Egyptian government. As long as the Muslim Brotherhood is attacking Israel, then that's fine. We're on the same side, essentially.
Right.
They don't mind this. So in a way, it's not actually a deal like no one sat down and decided, right, we'll do this, I'll give you this in exchange for that. No. But it's what the Egyptian government tolerates. And it's actually very, very interesting because President Sisi has been, consistently against the Muslim Brotherhood. But most recently, he actually appointed a man who is responsible for overseeing Egyptian media. And he is one of the most known promoters of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Wow.
So yes, exactly. So you have a lot of contradictions. But again, the Egyptians play a very, very strategic and tactical game where they know how to target whom with what weapon. And they do this with Europe, they do this with America and Israel, obviously.
What's their relationship with Qatar? That's also another player that knows how to play both sides. What's Egyptian relationship with Qatar?
So we've seen actually, the relationship warming recently over that issue of, Israel, because again, that's an issue that unites many people in the Arab world, sadly. And Egypt is also very desperate for investments. So very shortly after October 7th, we saw a delegation of Qatari businessmen. They went and met with the man who is the chief of Sinai tribes. So he's kind of the king of Sinai. And they pledged investments to his group of companies. So Qatar has been increasing its influence in Egypt since October 7th. And Egypt has been, more than willing and more than happy to allow this to happen.
Khaled, you wrote in your tweet that the top echelons of the Egyptian military are talking about war. Is there a tactile, kinetic, mechanical thing on the ground that Israel's got to watch out for? Is this really happening, or is this just bluster, or is this just wishing to destroy Israel, or is this physically real? Is this kinetic?
Oh yes, it's physically real, and the IDF knows this. And we've had statements from the IDF, even recognizing this. The former chief of staff did say, Egypt is not a threat now, and he said this publicly, very publicly. Egypt is not a threat, in the immediate term, but we're keeping a close eye on this because this could change, almost instantly. So he said this, and we know, Egypt has been building an infrastructure in Sinai. So, I think the most concerning thing is that Egypt has been building an infrastructure that essentially gets the troops from Cairo to Sinai really quickly. So, railway and all that stuff, which essentially means that Egypt is preparing for war. And the Israelis have asked through the Americans that this infrastructure is dismantled. Obviously, that didn't happen, and it probably will never happen. But they have been also sending reinforcements every once in a while, whenever there is, a development. For example, Israel saying we're going to go into Gaza City and we're going to take the whole of Gaza. They send, thousands of soldiers, and most recently they sent also tanks. So tanks, and that's the interesting part, because if the Egyptians are really worried about the prospect of Gazans breaking into Egypt, if you will, then you don't need tanks to fight the Gazans. Obviously, the Gazans don't have, they're not a military. It will be mostly civilians fleeing Gaza. But the fact that they're preparing with, air defenses, infrastructure, military infrastructure, and tanks, it's something completely different.
Right. There was a statement I saw that there was a statement made by an important person in Egypt who said that we don't want to let the Gazans in because that would not be part of the glorious national fight for Palestine, and we don't want to let them in. And basically, they should die out there for the glory of fighting the Jews. We're not going to give them any safety here in Egypt. Did I say that right, or did I misquote?
Yes,
Who was that?
Yes, to a large extent, yes, that is accurate. So the Egyptians would publicly argue that if we allow the Gazans into Sinai, then that means we are giving the Israelis a victory. Why would you do this and completely destroy this Palestinian cause and basically give the Israelis what they want? Which I understand, but it's not just it's not about this at all, actually, in my view. If you look at Egypt uses certain issues as strategic advantage and for leverage over different countries. So with the Europeans, they use illegal migration. So they go to the Europeans and get a few billions of dollars every once in a while because they say we've got almost 11 million migrants, illegal migrants and legal migrants who are refugees from Sudan, from Syria, blah, blah, blah. And Egypt has a very strong cooperation agreement with the EU to prevent illegal migration from North Africa. So the Egyptians always use this as, the stick to beat the Europeans and just go and right, if you don't give us money, we're going to let this blow up. They do the same when it comes to Gaza, and they say to, obviously, the Americans and Europe, we are trying to maintain the peace there. If we don't, you're going to have to give us money. It's really quite a big game that they play. That's not the only factor, but that's one of the factors. So for Egypt, the status quo of Hamas remaining where it is means that they get a lot of money, they get a lot of international backing, including from the French, from the Americans, even President Trump. He didn't reduce the Egyptian military aid because he wanted things to remain stable. He probably will at some point.
So they're playing a tricky, smart double game. And yet I always look at these countries and I say, you're so smart, you're so clever. And yet life isn't that great in Egypt today. There's no great welfare for the 100 million Egyptians. It's not a prosperity. It's not a great prosperity happening there. The anti-Semitism, it doesn't actually bring anything decent. There's no answer for the future of Egypt. There's no answer for this region. Sometimes I look at it, I'm like, what exactly are you offering? It's like, are you going to trick the Arabs for another 100 years and tell them that the only way that we can have any strength or power is to just hate Israel? We can all hate it together and fight Israel. We can erase that Israel. Like, hasn't 100 years already proven to you Israel's not going anywhere? You might as well accept them. You might as well deal with it. Let's think about the region. Let's think about a better world. Like, where's this? Like, Al-Sisi, wasn't he supposed to be like the smarter guy who was supposed to be anti-jihad, anti-Muslim Brotherhood? Wasn't he supposed to be allied with Israel and have?
He's very smart. He's very. This is where people go wrong. So I've always said, and this was essentially the main reason I got into this, intelligence analysis and research generally. If you understand people's motives, you understand everything. Everything makes sense.
Right.
So President Sisi's motive is to remain in power. Not only him, but for the military in Egypt to remain in power. So when he went after, he got rid of the Muslim Brotherhood and he was saying, I'm pragmatic, I'm, quite liberal. I want, Egypt to completely eradicate the threat of Islamism, he was selling a different version of himself to the West. So once that got accepted and he had the backing, that was advantages at some point. Now it's no longer that way.
Basically, all you have to do to catch the West is put on a suit, say a few times the word peace, talk about cooperation, and then you do whatever you want. Al Jolani, same thing in Syria, right? Qatar, same thing. You just put on you just got to put on a little suit, say a few nice things, and the rest of the time you can do whatever the hell you want, right? You can.
In a way, it's actually true, but I think he was genuine. Like he did actually act, from that view. And the challenge is he completely changed because it's no longer. So I always say President Sisi did everything and the exact opposite. So I said, I want Egypt to be welcoming. I want it to be tolerant. And he was the one, to rebuild and, renovate synagogues. But also he's the one who oversees a huge rise in anti-Semitism, even by Egyptian standards.
Wow.
It's about the security of his regime and his government and his position. Once you understand this, it all makes sense. If Hamas goes now, President Sisi has been ruling Egypt and, the economy is completely on its knees, but he still continues to be in position because he's a very smart man and he's going to do whatever it takes.
Well, I would call that clever. I know, I agree with you that as I said to you before, I'm a big believer in taking people seriously and taking the enemies seriously and thinking that they're very smart. I could see that he's smart, but he's not really smart. He's smart to survive. It's clever. It's not smart for his people. There's no future.
Oh, well, in many cases, this is where you find Egypt and Saudi Arabia, for example, completely different. So Saudi Arabia does what is right for its people. The UAE does what is right for its people. President Sisi, sadly, he does what's right for himself. So that's completely different. I think it might be also, just to explain the extent of what's happening. If we show the photo I sent you, that might be helpful to everyone.
It was hard for me to show that. Well,
no problem. That's fine. We can just talk about it basically.
Hold on one second. Just give me a second. I'll get it up here for you. Okay, hold on one second. I could do it. Okay.
That's the video. Sorry. Yeah.
That's the video. That's right. Hold on one second. Let me do a. Is that it?
Let's see. I can see it yet. Let's see. Here we go.
That's the picture that. Yeah.
Yes. So this is Diat Rashwan. Diat Rashwan is the head of the Egyptian State Information Service. So the Egyptian State Information Service is basically the Egyptian government's PR agency. But it's very specific. It's very specific in terms of it answers to the president of Egypt. It doesn't answer to the foreign ministry. It doesn't answer to anyone else. It answers to the president of Egypt. And in this comment, he is saying the distance between Al Arish and Tel Aviv. Al Arish is a city in northern Sinai in Egypt. And Tel Aviv does not exceed 100 kilometers. And he was saying this in response to basically, we can invade Israel and we can go and take over Tel Aviv. And why would we bother with, engaging with the Israelis in Gaza or Sinai or wherever? We're just going to go ahead and essentially take Tel Aviv. So completely destroy Israel.
We're back to Abdel Nasser. We're back to Nasser.
Yes. Oh, yes. It's far worse. It's far worse. Now, when I said this, I found even an Egyptian saying
worse.
Oh, wow. Yes. An Egyptian said to me, he's not the most senior official in Egypt. And that's actually a serious misreading because this man does not say whatever he wants. He says what he's told to say. This is the man who essentially speaks for the presidency in Egypt. This is not a comment that is, said by an average official. But this is one sample, I can give you hundreds. We've had President Sisi's mentor, for example, President Sisi's, who was his commanding officer in the military, by the way. and he's still, he's still seen as his mentor and very close to him. And he often goes on TV and says things even far worse than this. Things such as,
Go ahead.
we're going to completely destroy Israel. We're going to completely, wipe out Israel, and things that, it's, again, like I said, it's actually far worse than Nasser, because at the moment I think there is also an element in Egypt of, look at our military, it's huge. We've got submarines from Germany, we've got the backing of the Chinese, we've got we're trained by the Americans, and this has been ongoing for decades.
Wow.
Now,
it's like
sorry,
it's the same thing. It's like they've got these superpowers that arm them, and the 6-Day War and the Yom Kippur War were in many ways proxy wars for superpowers. And here, what you're describing is that China, Russia, Germany, France, or even the United States are arming Egypt with a huge army, and they're talking now belligerently about taking over Tel Aviv.
Yes, it's a real challenge, I think, because I think the US especially invested billions in the peace between Egypt and Israel. So no matter what happens from the Egyptians, the US is avoiding any confrontation. They always say,
Right.
you know what, let's try to appease them, out of war, rather than confront them and decide, right, this is not working, because they're very scared, understandably, that Egypt is going to, go to the Chinese side, despite the fact that Egypt was the very first North African country to have military drills with the Chinese, by the way, very recently. And they allowed the Chinese to run reconnaissance flights over the Middle East. This was when we had, a lot of American air carriers in the Middle East. So, the Chinese had really a lot of, an interesting time with the Egyptians. So it's very serious.
I'm going to say something which you're not going to hear in other podcasts. I want to say this right, and I want it to sound right. I'm not looking forward to a war with Egypt. I wish that they were our allies, but they deserve us to push back against them for what they did on October the 7th. And I've never been a fan of the Sinai Accords. I never thought that Sinai is really Egyptian. I think the people that live in Sinai are not Egyptian. I think that Sinai, from the Bible, when you left Egypt, you went to the Sinai. I always thought that Israel's greatest mistake that it made was giving up the Sinai, because that began the idea of land for peace, that began the idea of the two-state solution, began the idea of a so-called Palestinian autonomy. And so if a conflict brews, maybe Israel will take back control of the Sinai, which will protect it from Egypt, will protect it from Africa, will help it control the sea lanes. I think that the Suez Canal is Egyptian, always was, will be. Well, always was is not exactly true, because it was the Europeans that built it, but it was from the ancient Egyptian times they tried to build a canal to the Mediterranean. But Sinai, I would love to see it back in Israel's control. And I'm just saying something that's not going to be said on another podcast. I'd like to see Israel, if a conflict brews and Netanyahu has to start saying that we're in an 8-front war, then I hope that the Sinai comes back into Israeli hands.
I think the challenge is with this view is, number one, do the Israelis have what it takes to actually keep the Sinai? I don't think so. I don't think you have what it takes at all, because it's going to be a real challenge. You're going to have, you had the war of attrition from the time when Israel took the Sinai until the time Israel gave the Sinai back. The war of attrition this time is going to be a lot worse, because you're talking about 110 million people who are more than willing to die and fight to get back the Sinai. You're 10 million people. You just cannot keep land with airstrikes. It doesn't happen. Planes just don't have this capacity. You have to have soldiers on the ground, to have perimeters, and obviously that's a far more complicated issue. But it's not only this. This will be a serious issue, and I believe it's war between Egypt and Israel is inevitable. I think everyone in the establishment who says otherwise is really hoping that things will change miraculously. You could have a situation like Syria, where obviously when Assad went, you had a completely different reality. I think if you have a completely different reality in Egypt, then yes, there could be a very different situation. Otherwise, if you still have President Sisi, and if once President Sisi goes, you have someone else from the military with the same mindset, I think that makes war inevitable. So in my view, just to comment on war, I think war now is more likely than ever before.
Wow.
It's not highly likely, but it's more likely than ever before. I think, people need to understand the difference here, because a lot of people don't see this nuance. So what we're saying is Egypt is not going to war saying, right, let's fight. They're saying we have a red line, and if you cross that red line, we're going to go to war. Now, from my view, that red line is very blurry for the Israelis, and it can be easily, confused by the Egyptians, which could trigger war. But it's not going to be, an active decision. The Egyptians are going to say, right, let's go to war now. It's going to be more accidental, if you ask me. That's mostly because...
Accidental, but at the same time, you're telling me that they're mentally...
Yes, mentally prepared, yes.
They're mentally prepared for that. So
yes, mentally and physically.
Israelis are not mentally prepared with war with Egypt.
Yes, yeah. No, that's the thing. The Egyptians are mentally prepared for this. The Egyptians every single day. So, I mean, we have also Amr Adib, for example, who's actually the most prominent commentator in the Arab world, and he's Egyptian, and he has also Saudi nationality. He was given the nationality by the Saudis very recently. And he went and said, my military gear is ready to go to war against Israel. And that's, the most prominent commentator.
Would you say that October the 7th has whetted the appetite of a war with Israel in the Arab world?
Yes.
And the strike against Yemen and the strike against Iran, that hasn't subdued that appetite?
No, I don't think it has, because the fact that Israel was invaded by, all those thousands of terrorists, that gave many people an idea, which is Israel is not, invincible. Israel is not aware. Israel, the Israeli intelligence is not always, got their eyes out there and they're watching. So it actually did so many things. It promoted this conspiracy theory around, that the Israelis allowed it to happen or planned for it to happen so that they can take Gaza and, expand the greater Israel stuff. But at the very same time, the same people promoting this conspiracy theory would actually tell you it did show that we can invade Israel. You're going to find this from Egyptians a lot. They comment in my comments, you're going to see them saying, well, if Hamas could do this to you, and until this very day you haven't defeated Hamas, then we can go ahead and just completely destroy you. So.
Well, I appreciate that point that you just said right now is a very important point to me. I say this all the time. It's like for jihadists or anti-Israel folks, they're like, look, you can't defeat Hamas for 2 years. They're still there. And so you didn't win. You didn't win. You didn't take over Gaza. You didn't take over the land. You didn't kick out the bad guys. You didn't get back your hostages. So you're a loser. That's the way people read it. You could read it differently. Netanyahu could sell it to you differently. He could say, we're smashing the Hamas and Gaza is destroyed and we've undermined the Syrian regime and we stopped the nuclear arsenal in Iran and we just killed the majority of the Yemeni government. Okay, that's another read. But for the folks that you're talking about and understanding their mindset, they're like, no, you have not defeated your smallest enemies. We're still around. And you're obviously not that invincible and you didn't know, and you're open to attack.
Oh, yes. I mean, I wrote about this, extensively. And I think I wrote even about the fact that we had the Egyptian government declassifying very shortly after October 7th, a set of documents, including an intelligence assessment on the Yom Kippur War and the aftermath, actually this was written during the Yom Kippur War. And it was an intelligence assessment that said that, what's happening, the war is triggering protests across Israel. There are serious and substantial military disagreements between IDF leaders. And this was seen essentially as, the symptoms or, I suppose the advantages of what Egyptians believe was war. So you see this happening now. I think my main challenge is it doesn't seem to me, I mean, you are, saying Netanyahu could say this or could say that, but actually I believe he's the most capable. I don't think you have any other mainstream politician in Israel who's better than him or even anywhere near as good as him. So
let me ask you this. I just want to break it back. Today, 6 Jews, maybe 7 were murdered in Ramot in Jerusalem. How does that affect the would-be Israel attackers, would-be jihadists? How do they see it?
So you had one of the most prominent commentators in Egypt actually welcoming this attack in a way, and explicitly saying that he hopes next time it will be Netanyahu himself who's killed.
Wow.
Oh yes. I think it's again. So you will find that different people use it in different ways. So the overwhelming majority of Saudis, for example, are saying, "Look, we told you you're never going to have peace unless you agree to our vision and give the Palestinians their state."
Yeah.
And you have others who are saying, you know, obviously we welcome this.
Yeah,
and
well,
we hope
I know.
we can
Let's
see
just give them half of the country then. I know these guys that killed us today. Let's give them some more land. Then
Yes,
they'll
yes.
be peaceful.
Yes.
Sure.
But I think the serious challenge I have, and I want to really highlight this, it seems to me that the Israeli establishment has very, very serious issues in terms of confronting the main issues and not just sort of avoiding it or hoping it goes away at some point or whatever. So you're going to see that, you know, not long ago, an Egyptian member of parliament went on Twitter and actually incited violence and terrorism in Israel. And he said, you know, that he's hoping all those Israeli Arabs who protested outside the Egyptian embassy saying, you know, you should basically do something and get involved and prevent what's happening in Gaza. He said that those Israeli Arabs should each pick a knife and go and slaughter as many Israelis as they can. That's an Egyptian MP. If you
Wow.
let an Egyptian MP promote terrorism like this without any sanctions, without any reaction from Israel or the US, I'm really sorry. You're just saying we're fair game. It's that simple. You are fair game. It's
Khaled Hassan is an Egyptian British national security and foreign policy expert and a member of the council, the Isaac Herzog's Council of Voice of the People initiative. Thank you very much for joining us today and giving us an insight into Egyptian psychology and the Arab world psychology. It saddens me because at the end, I say to myself, I say this a lot of times when I'm asked on other shows. I say to people like, what do you really think? Do you really think you're going to destroy Israel? Do you really think that this is going to bring anything to this region? It's not. You're not going to bring any blessings to your region, neither spiritual nor physical. It's just not, it's not real. And you're wasting everybody's time and money and lying to them, all these conspiracy theories, all these lies. And it's not going to give anybody a better life. And as you said, the Egyptian economy is on its knees. Israel's economy is $500 billion yearly. It's like, let's live together. Let's do tourism together. Where's Egyptian tourism? In the toilet. Where's Egyptian, exports? In the toilet. Look what they've even allowed their own, neighbors, the Yemenis down the Red Sea to do to their economy. Look what they've done. The terrorism that the Yemenis have done against shipping in the Suez Canal has destroyed whose economy? Egypt's.
Yes.
So it just boggles the mind. And in Judaism we say hasinah mekalkelet et hashura. The hate makes you kooky. It makes you miss the point of how to move forward, and that's a big mistake. Any case, Khaled Hassan, thank you so much for being with us, and we hope to have you on again soon. Thank you. On this
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
All right, Khaled Hassan, great analyst and a great voice to help us understand what's happening in the Arab world, which is sometimes a world that we don't see so well. Sometimes we don't see it exactly with clarity. Today, another jihadist attack against the Jewish people in the land of Israel. And let's take a moment to honor those who have fallen. Let's see if we could see some of their names and their faces. They have been killed today in a terrorist attack, which here's the faces. I want to show you, who these people are so that you could see the real faces of the fallen today. I want you to see that. And here they are, the victims whose life has been snuffed out today. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Parsh, Israel Manzer, Rabbi Yosef David, Rabbi Mordechai Steinzak, Rabbi Yaakov Pinto, and Sarah Mendelson. Some of these are also Americans who made Aliyah. And look at the different ages, different ranges. Absolutely horrific. But when we talk about this, when we talk about this horror, we don't talk about it in the language of that we're broken, that we are horrified, but we're not going to be broken by these terrorists. And Israel will be ready already today to get back up. We know about terrorism. We faced it. We've faced it for the last 2,000 years. We faced it for the last 3,000 years. And we will get back up and be at strength. And we're going to mourn the dead. But all those who think that somehow that Israel's weaker today, it's not. It's not. And I hope that we're going to be stronger today by looking at this terrorism, looking at it in the face and being like, where does it come from? Where is it being taught? And those things have to be snuffed out. And we have to, of course, take the dead and listen to them when they call out and say, never again. Don't let this happen to my children, to my grandchildren. Don't let this happen to my parents. Snuff this stuff out. Get rid of this jihadism. October the 7th is an opportunity to make the war that will clean up around here. And a famous rabbi once said, my war will bring to peace, and your peace will bring to war. Meaning to say, if you keep talking about peace and you don't want to strike against terrorism and jihadism and the education, then guess what? You're talking peace, but in the end, you're bringing upon us war. And if you talk war and say, I'm going to destroy the bad guys, then you're going to bring a peace on this region, because we will have struck out against, and we will also have defended other voices that want to speak out against the jihadism. And that is the sad state of affairs today. And the war continues not just in Gaza, but on the streets of Jerusalem. It also continues, of course, in the media, where Israel is being besmirched. Let's take a look at Richard Goldberg from the FDD organization talking on Fox about the commitment to end terrorism.
Berg, senior advisor at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much for talking to us. First, I just want to ask you, how much weight do you think is on President Trump to finally put an end to this after just hearing comments saying such?
Well, I think the president has been truly committed to the mission of both destroying Hamas and getting all of the hostages back. The hostages have been coming home under this president, starting from his transition, and Israel has had his unrelenting support to finish off Hamas. We are seeing Hamas break in the south of Gaza, where you've been able to get out of the UN Hamas business model of controlling food aid. If that happens in the rest of Gaza, in Gaza City and northern Gaza, Hamas is finished, and we're seeing their leadership obviously taken apart. Abu Ubaida's killing, obviously, one of the last remaining leaders of that October 7th crew that launched.
Okay, so Abu Ubaida is a very bad dude who is the head of Hamas's propaganda arm. And we now understand how deep every aspect of the war was tied into the propaganda ministry that Abu Ubaida headed. And now he's gone. But we now understand that the narrative war is part and parcel of the attack on Israel, and it's global. And today's attack is part of that. It's part of a consciousness war, a narrative war, a war of legitimacy for Israel, and to legitimize terrorism against Israel. So whenever there's a terrorism like today, it legitimizes more attacks against Israel.
Launched this entire war.
Speaking of Abu Ubaida, the Israel defense minister posted this, and I want to put it up on the screen. Hamas terror spokesperson Abu Ubaida was eliminated in Gaza and sent to meet all the liquidated members of the axis of evil from Iran, Gaza, Lebanon, and Yemen at the bottom of hell. Your thoughts?
Well, Abu Ubaida was truly an evil part of this cabal leading Hamas in Gaza. Understand that he was not just the spokesperson for Hamas, he was the head of their influence operations abroad and obviously their psychological warfare at home. A lot of the videos you've seen of hostages meant to instill fear and terror across hostage families like the one you just heard from was Abu Obaida. And when you look at college campuses and street protests around the country, you had people wearing the images of Abu Obaida. So a service to our homeland security that this man's been eliminated.
I'm glad that you just mentioned that, because the protests that have been happening here in the country, the pro-Palestinian protests.
Very important points that the terrorism spills out into college campuses in America. Like, these guys are not content with Gaza and with Lebanon. They have a global reach. They're smart. They have a global reach, and that reach affects the United States. And when Secretary of State Rubio blocks these guys from coming into the United States, he's defending the United States. When we destroy jihadis like Abu Obaida, it actually it weakens them globally, not just locally, and that's the topic here, an important topic.
I understand that they're doing that for the civilians who are stuck in Gaza. But let's remind everyone that it's not the civilians, it's Hamas that's running this war. And that's why we should be supporting Israel. In fact, Senator Haggerty on Hamas using, I want you to listen to him talking about, Hamas using humans as shields in Gaza. They do not care about the people of Gaza. Let's watch.
The best way to resolve the humanitarian crisis is for Gaza to quit using humans as their shield, to get away from the Palestinians. Hamas needs to go away. They are basically reaping huge profits and funding their operations off the back of the Palestinians. It's the Palestinians' plight that the Hamas is driving. They're the ones that need to go away.
What further pressure can the United States, first of all, put on Hamas? And secondly, what more do we need to do to support Benjamin Netanyahu's plight here to finally end this war? Because Israelis have said they want the war to end.
No. See, the Israelis have not said they want the war to end. The Israelis have said that we want victory. And this war is not ending. I'm giving you guys heads up from Yishai. The war is not ending. Memo, the war is not ending. Because jihadism, if it even ends, it just means it restarts in a little bit of time. It's not ending. There's a big war. It's yet to come. It's with Egypt. It's with Qatar. It's with the jihadis of Syria. It's with the jihadis of Judea and Samaria. It's with the jihadis of within Israel. There is a war. It's on. It's on, baby. Talk about getting this war off. You're not going anywhere. That's not real. The war is on. By the way, our war is also on here and at Yishai Fleischer TV together with an amazing team. We're putting out tons of content, and you are a part of it wherever you are. If you want to be part of the fight, then please support us. A great way to do that is buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. Buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. It's a great way to support the show and our efforts. Okay. So get out there and help us, because we're also in a war. We are the ones that are fighting Abu Obaida. The consciousness war, the influence war, the influence campaign, that's us. We're the ones. We're not supported by the Israeli government. We're supported by the God of Israel, and with your help as well. So buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. You could also like, subscribe, comment, and be part of our programming, including our awesome YouTube store. There's great ways to support. We also have great content coming out, including an interview with Musab Hassan Yusuf and much more. Let's take a look here. Let's finish up with Fox and the folks from the Defense of Democracies.
Well, let's also remember how complicit the United Nations and the international community is with Hamas in putting civilians in danger. The only war where you have to stay as a civilian in the middle of the fighting. You're not allowed to be a refugee, even if you want to leave Gaza, as President Trump has tried to propose. So that's ludicrous. But also,
Richard Goldberg saying the big truth here, the big ugly truth. Where's the refugees? Remember the old ads? Where's the beef? Where's the refugees? Get these people out of there. Let them into Egypt. Egypt doesn't care. They want them to die because it helps President Sisi stay in power and their anti-Israelism to look good. But the people, they could just get in the line of fire. That's fine.
what we can do is put pressure on the UN, on the World Food Program, Cindy McCain, who still is at the helm of the World Food Program, trying to stop and sabotage the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. If you can replicate the success of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation from the south of Gaza in central Gaza, while also destroying the military infrastructure in Gaza, and that's what the IDF intends to do, I think the days are truly finally numbered for Hamas. That's good news for peace. That's good news, hopefully, for hostages coming home as well.
Let's hope. Rich Goldberg, great to see you. Thank you.
Nothing is going to actually get it done unless Israel actually takes over Gaza and controls it. It's tricky. There's economic questions, and there's questions about what do we give the Arabs? What do we give them residency? How do we deal with medicine and education? There's big questions. How do we help some of them leave? A lot of them leave that are jihadists. There are big questions out there. There are big questions, no doubt. But there's no solution to this war until we take over and control Gaza. There's no way. There's no way until we push back on the Egyptians. There's no way to win until we identify the Qataris as the enemy. And as a former Knesset member, Moshe Feiglin, said, I like this very much. He said, if the prime minister of Israel is wearing a hostage pin instead of a temple mount, a temple pin, will never win. As long as he's wearing the hostage pin and not the temple pin, we will never actually win. We might get to some stalemate. We might mow the lawn, and it might be okay for a while, but we will never win. You want to win? You got to put on that temple pin and go for broke. Go for the big victory and not the small victory. Okay, speaking of big victories, let's watch one last video, and this one is from Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, and what he said there.
מצד התנחומים למשפחות, ואנחנו מתפללים.
I want to send condolences to those who were lost in this terror attack today in Jerusalem.
צריך לזכור דבר אחד, ראש
And I'm praying for all those who are injured. And he says, and now he's addressing the prime minister directly. Check this out. It goes kind of quickly, so I have to pause.
לזכור דבר אחד, ראש הממשלה.
And so the prime minister says, you have to remember one thing, Mr. Prime Minister.
היה כאן פעולה ממש של גבורה של חייל מחטיבת.
There was a very heroic. He's a minister. He's talking directly to the prime minister in public. He says there was a heroic act of a soldier here who came from the new ultra-Orthodox unit in the army, the Chashmonaim unit.
ושל שני חרדים שקיבלו את נשק במסגרת רפורמת הנשק.
And two ultra-Orthodox citizens who received weapons through his weapons reform, which means giving weapons out to more citizens.
אמרתי נשק מציל חיים, צריך לזכור את זה. אני אומר
I have said weapons save lives, and we have to remember that.
לאזרחי ישראל לכו להתחמש. ודבר אחד נוסף, רק אתמול
Israeli citizens should be allowed to arm themselves. Okay, and that's what he's saying directly to Prime Minister. Help me get more Israelis armed. It's important. It saves lives.
בית המשפט העליון הקל עוד יותר בתנאים של נוח'בות, של רוצחים, וקבע שצריך להתאפל.
So he says, and one more thing, the Israeli Supreme Court has issued orders to be nicer and kinder to the elite Nukhba Hamas terrorists in our prisons. And they came down with such an order to be nicer and to, feed them better, give them a better treatment, because Ben-Gvir was giving them a hard time in prison. It was not pleasant to be in Israeli prisons.
חברים, זה לא משחק. כשבית המשפט העליון עושה דבר כזה, המסר למחבלים הוא מסר ברור. ואני אומר...
He says, when this is not a joke, when the Supreme Court sends out a message like this, then the message is clear to the terrorists, which is the Supreme Court has got your back.
לשופטי בית המשפט העליון, אל תעשו את זה.
He says, I tell the judges in the Supreme Court, don't do this.
תפסיקו את זה. לבוא עכשיו ולהתערב בתפריט של הנוח'בות, אחרי שכל הגורמים בו שם.
To now come in and to get involved in the daily diet, the food rations that the Nukhba elite Hamas terrorists in our prisons have, sends the wrong message.
אומרים, זה מביא הרתעה, זה מוסיף הרתעה. לבוא ולעשות את הדבר הזה, זה למעשה לבוא לנוח'בות, לבוא למחבלים ולהגיד להם, אנחנו רוצים לשפר את התנאים שלכם, לא יקום ולא יהיה, לא אצלנו ראש הממשלה.
He says, I'm not gonna succumb to these orders. We can't right now, on a day like this, give the wrong impression, the wrong message to the terrorists that it's going to be okay if they get caught. And by the way, in the UAE, the 2 terrorists that killed the rabbi, right? It was like about a year ago. Guess what happened to them? They offed them. They eliminated them. They executed them with 0 fanfare. They just took them out. They're just like, no. We're not going to have that. And Minister Ben-Gvir has been calling a long time for death penalty for soldiers, and that's part of his mantra. That's part of his campaign, and he's been calling for that. Today is such a day where you're like, terrorists got to go, and we can't be giving them a good life in our prisons.
התנאים בכלא ימשיכו להיות כמו שהם, זה מוסיף הרתעה. ועוד משפט אחד, יש לנו חוק גירוש משפחות מחבלים.
This treatment of terrorists in prison, not giving them a hotel life, not giving them camp life, but giving them a hard life, those terrorists that have been caught, is not going to change, and we certainly cannot change it on a day like this. That's not the message we have to send. And now he goes on to another topic, which is the law trying to unify Arab families.
חתמתי בשבועות האחרונים על 35 צווים כאלה, אני מאמין ששר הפנים החדש יריב לוין אחד. יש לנו חוק גירוש משפחות מחבלים, אני חתמתי בשבועות...
I'm sorry, it's not about unification, but it's about kicking out families of jihadists, of jihadist terrorists. There's a law now passed to kick out families of jihadists, and he goes, I myself have signed 35 such decrees to kick out jihadists from Israel that are families of their terror families. Yariv Levin, who's the new internal affairs minister, he believes that he will sign on to these Savim, what's that called? Savim, not declarations, but basically eviction notices. The Minister of Internal Affairs has to sign off on them. I believe that he'll do it.
גירוש משפחות מחבלים, יחד עם יד תקיפה בבתי הכלא ועם כל העשייה שעושים, גם שב"כ, גם צה"ל, גם המשטרה, גם שירות בתי הסוהר, רפורמת הנשק לכו להתחמש.
Okay, so he says a lot of things there. The bottom line is he's saying 3 things. He's saying more citizens need more guns, then brings more protection and a much faster rate of response. He says that we have to keep the atmosphere of the prisons unpleasant for terrorists, so that they send a signal that if you get caught, you're going to have a very unpleasant time in Israeli prisons, and that is part of deterrence. And finally, he says we're going to kick out families of terrorists. So that's Minister Ben-Gvir, Minister of Internal Security, and he's also politicking at this moment. He's using this moment that people are angry, 6 Israelis murdered, and he's saying, listen, this is my platform. This is what I believe we should do, and I think that we have to agree. Let's finish off the show, of course, with prayer and turning to God. One of the things that we do here at Yishai Fleischer TV is that we don't just make it about tactics and strategies, and we remember that we are the children of God, that God defends the Jewish people, that we're supposed to do his will, and that when something like this happens, it's also a message that we have to repent. Repenting, by the way, means coming back to keep the Sabbath and keep kosher, etc. It also means to actually listen to what God says about the bad guys and how to get rid of them, about how to treat this land and to get rid of haters of Israel from this land. That's also part of repentance. We are in the month of Elul, the month of repentance. And this is the month of repentance for Jews and Gentiles and lovers of Israel. We're coming towards Rosh Hashanah. And you can see now on the screen the names of injured people to pray for. Tova Gittel Bas Miriam Shoshana, Yosef ben Ruchama, Yaakov Re'em ben Dalia, Mordechai ben Frimitzara, Yaakov Chaim ben Tamar Yvonne, Bela Tamar Bas Chana Tzipora, and if there's other names, you could send them in. But the bottom line is that we got a lot of people to pray for who are in hospitals right now. And that's also part of repentance. Okay. We got a lot of people injured. This stuff is not a joke. It's not a joke. You can't just talk about peace and think that everything's going to work out. We got to fight the bad guys with extreme bias. We got to get rid of them and not allow one more person to get hurt. And that's actually fixing our relationship with God and with this land as well. I want to thank my team for doing a great job at getting all these videos together. I want to thank Yo for helping today make the show happen and being the producer and being behind the scenes here. Thank you very much, and helping with all the comments. I want to thank all the folks that have commented, and I forgot to tell you that there's a great way to get your comments read and to support the show at the same time, and that is Super Chats. Super Chats is a great way to help our show and to help what we do, and also to become a member. And I saw people were doing that as well. If we want to post any of those comments, I could take 3 or 4 comments right now before the end of the show, and we can discuss them. But bottom line, tough day in Israel, but also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to be strong together. Let's decide never again. Let's decide to be closer to God. Let's decide to defeat the bad guys in toto, not piecemeal. Let's decide to say the truth. One of the big ways that we're going to defeat the bad guys is by saying the truth. Let's say what Egypt is doing. And that's what Khaled did today on the show. Let's just say the truth, who they are. Let's talk about Qatar. Let's talk about jihadism. Let's talk about Israel's rights to the Temple Mount, to Gaza, to the Sinai, to the Sinai Peninsula. Let's talk about it honestly. Okay, talk about it. Talk about it like, for example, Kay writes, there's never been a country named Palestine. Arab colonizers aren't Palestinians. Okay, let's tell the truth. And let's tell God the truth. God, we want first thing, my good friend, Enoch, he became a YouTube member. Thank you very much for joining the membership on YouTube. Let's pray, folks. Let's pray for a safer Israel, a better Israel. Let's pray that this moment, let's pray for those families. Let's pray for those who were murdered. And let's pray for a stronger Israel through this. Let's pray that we take these moments and just really inside say, let's each one of us take upon ourselves something to get closer to God and to Israel in memory of the people who were murdered today. What's that thing? What's that thing? So I want to tell you one last story, and then I got to get off. I want to tell you about a good friend of mine named Anne. Anne is a good friend of mine, a beloved friend of mine, a Gentile, a non-Jew, a lover of Israel down in Texas. And I was with Anne at her beautiful home. And I said to her, this home is so beautiful. And she's got all these Jewish books and wonderful things. I said to her, you know, Anne, I love this house. I love being here. It's so special. But you know what? You and your husband have done so much to support Israel, but you could do one little thing for me. Your house doesn't have a prayer place towards Jerusalem. Can you make a pew? Can you rearrange the furniture a little bit so that you can have a direction towards Jerusalem wall with a picture of Jerusalem so that we could pray towards Jerusalem? And I threw this out to her as an idea. Well, she called me the other day. She said, Yishai, I rearranged my furniture. I got a picture developed of the temple in Jerusalem, and I made it by the eastern facing wall. And now you can have the art scroll books and the bookshelves and the lectern. And it's a Jewish pew. This is a non-Jewish person saying, now I have a direction to pray towards Jerusalem. And I urge all of us to take a step towards praying towards Jerusalem, praying towards the God of Israel, praying to the God of Israel, and praying that Israel will wake up and be strong, and that the Lion of Judah shall arise. I want to thank you so much. I want to remind you to go to buymeacoffee.com/Yishai, and also our website dedicated to strengthening Israel, which is at fightforisrael.org, fightforisrael.org, where we buy tractors, beautify the land, and do a lot of stuff to strengthen the land of Israel and its citizens and the Bible. Don't forget to also check out biblicalhighway.com. Biblicalhighway.com is the story of the Biblical Highway, which we're promoting. And we hope that you come visit and tour the Biblical Highway soon. And don't forget to check out hebronfund.org, where I am right now. Hebron, we strengthen Hebron and Jewish rights in Hebron and continue to beautify and strengthen the city and the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs here. Learn more about it at hebronfund.org. All right, my dear friends, my beloved friends all over the world, thank you so much for being with me. You are a blessing. It is a blessing to be with you. We shall overcome. God is with us. I'm Yisrael Chai. And at the same time, we cry. At the same time, we get strong. It's the duality of being pro-Israel. It's the duality of loving the Jewish people. And I know that you are that if you've been with me on this live stream. God bless you folks, wherever you are. Lots of energy from the good land, from the land of Israel, wherever you are. Blessings of Hashem from Yerushalayim, from Hebron, and Shalom.